Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
And we get the back view of him. And I mean, it's just a mega.
52 yards is a long shot. Magnum PI, what we named him. No idea.
Just a magnum.
Yeah, just a magnum.
Come on cam last year, we said probably 150, mid 150.
Yeah.
Same doe from the morning come out with that 9-pointer.
Here steps out this 90-inch 8-pointer. You're like,
I'm like, okay, well, there's still a buck back there grunting.
Yeah.
And then out steps like another 90-inch 8-pointer. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm like, deer right there.
Yeah, like
and he's already
yards.
30 yards.
Yeah.
He was literally 5 yards from the base of the tree. Could have been, had a buck down at 1:40 in the afternoon, back there deep on public. 3 does come out pretty early. It was like 245, 24-yard shot, sent the combat veteran, and I tell you what, man, dude, it just smoked. We always get so jacked up when the other person kills. It's just almost like we got it done.
Yeah. And when you killed that doe, I was like, hell yeah, man.
And we come down here to Missouri.
I asked Comey one more time. I'm like, is it a good buck? And he goes, yeah, real good, solid buck. I'm like, all right, boom. And the deer just drops. Sure. Super special to me.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy. Baller Rut.
This is the Whitetail Legacy Podcast coming at you with another deer story. We're going to be talking about small details and being mobile and moving on deer to be successful. We're going to get into the people that make this possible, and then we're going to get into the show. We're going to start off with a VIP. Just to let you guys know, the combat veterans are available. Buy them directly from the VIP website. Or Matt and Cindy personally, call them up, let them know. And the veteran two blade is $35 this year. Great price there if you want to get into the two blade and try the variable cutting with technology. Do you have the VIP shout out?
Yeah, this week's shout out is Rhett Haggerty. Rhett is currently in his second year of being a Marine and says so far he loves it and is currently thinking about making a career out of it. So, Rhett, we support your decision either way, whether you just, do your initial sign-up duty or if you want to make a career out of it. So we appreciate you signing up and doing that. And, I'd love to hear your decision on that, whether you want to make a career out of it or not. So we appreciate everything you've done so far. And whatever you decide to do, you've got the back between the Whitetail Legacy Podcast and the VIP family.
All right, ECW calls, all your custom call needs, embrycustomwoodworking.com. Check them out. Get your grunt tubes ready for season. You got Exodus trail cams?
Yeah, Exodus trail cam tip of the week is they're not very fond of the third-party readers, as that could lead to the pictures being scrambled on your SD card, corrupted. It can also lead to damage of your SD card or your camera, due to swapping in and out. And then they just recommend you swap the cards out, bring it back home, put it into your PC or your laptop. Or if you want to, if you have a upgraded cam like their Lift 2, you can just view it right there on their viewing screen on the camera. So if you want to pick up one of them Lift 2s, ExodusOutdoorGear.com.
Yep. All right, get into next level, all your deer supplement needs. This is a time of the year that those minerals are key. People are getting those out. There's no way to get better trail cam pictures than to have mineral feed out. If your state allows that, you're not only benefiting the deer herd by giving them the best nutrition possible, you're also getting some fire pics to back that up.
Yes.
So that's something that we're super jealous that we can't do. We feel like we get so much more intel, so much more cool pics. Check them out at nextleveldeer.com. Ingram's Outdoor Obsession.
I do have Sunshine up there at Ingram's shop. I dropped him off. Due to the whole COVID situation, the DNR was hesitant to come to my house and give me a salvage tag, but he did send me one in the mail. I got it on Sunshine. dropped him off, and Sunshine will hopefully be on a pedestal here in the near future. So Ingram's going to be mounting him up and bringing him back to life. I have a nice still image of the footage that Cody got freehand of Sunshine in the plot, and it's going to be how Sunshine's mounted. So
Nice.
I always like to. You're this kind of the same way, just kind of mount like how you remember that deer.
Yeah.
It wasn't how I shot him or any trail cam pics, but it was like he stood out in the plot for like 3.5, 4 minutes, like literally, and that's just how you remember the deer. So I like to mount the deer how it's just kind of ingrained in your head.
Yep. All right, let's get into the show. All right, we got Garrett Heikes on. How you doing tonight, man?
Good. How about yourselves?
Doing great, man. We appreciate you coming on. You're coming on with Chasing the Dream. You were out turkey hunting. I'm jealous as hell with Next Level. We got to see some snap stories. So we started talking. You started listening to the podcast, and I was like, hey, man, you should come on. We'll talk a little whitetail, and we'll get your brand out there for people to follow.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Just for our listeners, we've been following the brand for a while. Great video content, great picture content, real good quality. Just solid dudes out there doing work, and you guys enjoy it. Let the listeners know a little bit more about you.
All right. I'm Garrett Heikes. I'm from Northeast Nebraska. I went to college for digital cinema and media production because I wanted to get into the filming, hunting, and fishing stuff. And basically been running around with the camera ever since I was young. Mom always had one around, so I got into it pretty heavy. And then me and a buddy of mine in high school kind of started doing all that stuff together. So went to college for it, and straight out of college got to meet some cool people and filmed for a hunting and fishing show that summer. And then got in contact with one of my business partners now, Andy Klassen, and we decided to start our own outdoors TV show, social media, YouTube, and it's called Chasing the Dream TV. And right now we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and then these guys are just telling us to get on Twitter. I'm not much of a Twitter guy, but we're gonna have to get us an account on there. And then our show also plays on News Channel Nebraska, which is a statewide cable TV channel. It's also on Dish and Roku, so we get quite a few views that way, and basically just trying to make a living doing what we love.
I would say that's cool, man. Especially to hear like how deep your filming passion goes. Like for Cody and I, it's just been the past 4 or 5 years, but for you, it's been extended way beyond that. And it's cool to hear that you've been filming for 10 plus years.
Oh yeah. My dad filmed stuff when I was little. Got to film my brother's first deer hunt, and kind of got me into it. And I filmed my first bow kill in 2014 with a GoPro on my stabilizer, and that really kicked it off for me.
I'm gonna say if you can just get like that, good solid footage when in the early stage, it's just really gonna help you stick with it. And on them days that you are early in it and you don't want to take your gear, you're like, well, I got that one clip that I really love to watch, or that was pretty cool of a deer doing this or that, and it can really help keep you motivated to stick with it. And eventually you're just gonna be like, well, it's just what I do now is just go film. So
yep. Yeah, that first time it pays off for you. I think it really starts a fire for me anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the way it is with a lot of people. It's just kind of the procession of filming. You just got to have that one little thing that gets you over the edge, and after that, man, you're committed.
For sure.
All right, man. Well, we want to have you on to talk small details kill big bucks, and you killed an awesome buck, man. I love the flyers and splits on that thing. It's awesome, and you showed me a couple videos of it, and I'm super excited to hear the story. So go ahead and break down the story of the hunt, and then we'll kind of go into the details that made you successful.
All right. You want me to start from what I consider the beginning, or just start from the beginning of that hunt?
Start from what you consider the beginning.
All right. Well, like I said, partnered with Andy Klassen in 2017. And him and his dad have a bunch of ground up in what I would consider the very northeast corner of what's considered north central Nebraska, up along the Missouri River. And we're actually right between the Missouri and the Niobrara River. So for people around here, you probably know that area pretty well. But 2017 fall was the first year that I had gotten up there, and opening day of rifle was the first day that I actually got to hunt it. And I went out with Andy and his dad, and I actually shot a pretty good buck on opening night of rifle. And then I spent the next week of rifle season up there doing some spot and stalk and hanging hunts with my bow just to try to learn the property, and ended up getting pretty close to some good bucks on the ground. Wasn't able to pull off a shot. So I had basically no experience on this ground other than a week. So 2018 season, I really got a ton of cameras out there and started to learn the land a lot more, and was getting good pictures of bucks all through summer, and had, I think, 3 bucks that were on my hit list that were between 140 and I'd say 155 that we were after. And I had 2 of them pretty patterned in a couple different spots for the first weekend. And I was really excited about that. I had a couple good sets hung and got up there opening weekend of season and went out to the spot that I was really excited for. And I got up there after dark the night before, so I had no idea what was going on, but got in the stand and the sun started to come up, and I found out there was cows in that pasture now that weren't there the week before. So any of you guys that hunt around cows know, I mean, deer aren't scared of cows, but they don't like living where the cows are. So that spot got busted, and I actually didn't get pictures of another shooter buck in there until 2 weeks after the cows got moved out. So basically that first weekend had to make a big adjustment, find another buck. So I went after that next night, I went after the other buck that I had patterned and pull up to the gate, and that pasture has cows in it too, and that's about 3 miles away. So basically started from scratch. And the next morning I decided to go sit up on a high hill. Got a lot of rolling hills up there, and it's pretty open country, so you can sit up in glass, kind of like you do for mule deer, just to see where the deer go back to bed. So burnt one morning of sitting in a stand just to try to figure out what was going on, and sat up on this high peak and glassed one of our other good bucks that I got on camera occasionally but didn't know where he was living. And I watched him from about a half mile away and saw him go up into a bedding pocket. And this is my last morning up there for opening weekend. So I watched him go up into the bed, and we drove all the way around that afternoon to try to figure out how to get on him. And I watch a lot of hunting videos online and the next buck videos and stuff. So I learned from Andre DeQuisto the bump and dump technique, where he goes in and actually bumps bucks out of their bed to figure out where they're coming from, and then he'll hang a stand and go back in and try to catch them coming back. So I basically used that technique, went in and found a pretty sweet spot right by where the deer walked and had the wind and everything, hung a stand, and was pretty excited about it for the next weekend. So I got up there and had 2 days to hunt, and I walked in the first morning and the gate was closed on the pasture. So I was kind of worried about that from the start. Sat that morning, as soon as the light started coming up, I saw about 200 cows in the same pasture. So ended up only seeing a couple does and got screwed by cows that morning too. So second weekend in a row, basically starting from scratch, trying to figure something out. So I went a mile up the creek, which is basically a small river up there, and had pictures of bucks on a couple different trails crossing the creek. So I decided that I'd hang a stand by where one of my cameras was, where I got a few pictures of that same buck that I glassed actually, and hung a stand in there, sat there the next 2 mornings, and had a couple does and small bucks come by within range, but I kept hearing deer cross the creek farther up from me where I couldn't see. So the next weekend I came back up and hung an observation stand. The first night I got there, watched the deer use that trail that I was hearing them use, and then I did the same thing the next morning out of that stand. So I felt pretty confident about it, and went up into this draw where the trails were going and learned that it's basically just a little oak valley that leads up into bedding, and it was full of acorns, bigger acorn crop that year than I've ever seen. So I found a perfect tree, hung a stand, and that was the first cold front of the year, was the third weekend of September in 2018. So, and we had a full moon coming, so I was pretty excited about that. All the conditions seemed to be lining up perfect. So I went in that next morning and saw a ton of deer all in range. At one time, I actually had 9 bucks and 8 does and fawns in range at the same time, and none of them had any idea I was there. And actually ended up seeing one of my shooters that morning that I was after, and he was probably about 75 yards away and skirted around me. So I went back to the same stand the next morning, and that was actually the full moon morning, and hadn't seen a ton, none of my better bucks, and it was probably 9:30, 9:45. So by that time it's pretty late, and I usually get down around that time early season. So I pack up, or actually I'll go back. This is pretty important for the later part of the story. I packed up all my camera gear, but I had my GoPro on my bow hook as a second angle just to get me in the bow if I were to shoot. But I saw one of our other bucks at like 150 yards come through this trail, and I knew there was a pretty good bedding area over there, and it's pretty sneakable. There's a lot of sand and thick cedars that you can sneak around. So I decided I didn't have much to lose, so I threw my GoPro on my stabilizer, figuring if I do get a sneak up on this deer, that's the only way I'm going to get it on video. So I do all that, tear down my camera arm and pack everything in my bag, drop my bow to the base of the tree, and I get halfway down, and it's dead calm this morning, so I don't know how this deer snuck in, but I get halfway down the tree, and I catch movement out of the corner of my eye. And I look over, and this buck that I now called my miracle buck, because that's basically what this story adds up to, is standing at 25 yards eating acorns, and he's facing right at me but doesn't see me somehow. And I'm hanging off the side of this oak tree in plain sight. And I freeze, and I'm staring at this deer and just watching him eat, and he turns his head. So I make the quick decision to try to get back up the tree and somehow make it in my stand without him hearing me. Pulled my bow up as fast as I could. Luckily, it was on the side of the tree where he couldn't see it. Otherwise, I probably would have been busted right away. So I get my bow up, get an arrow nocked, hang it. The deer's still standing in the same spot, and he doesn't look like he's moving. So I actually got my tree arm and everything set back up, got the camera on it, and right when I got the camera locked in, he started to move. So he comes around to the west of me, and he's probably 35 yards away, but I can't shoot yet. So I swing the camera, and Cody, I know you saw the video of the shot. I swing the camera around, and it's through the Y of a tree, and I'm off to the right side of the Y where I actually shoot from. So he steps out, I range him at 20, 25 yards, and he stops perfect, slightly quartering to, a little more than I thought he was, and I don't know what happened on my first shot, if I was just too excited and didn't pay enough attention to where I was aiming. But I ended up hitting him a little forward and high in the shoulder. And when he spun, the arrow was sticking way too far out of him. So I knew right then, if I got lucky and got one lung, I'd have to leave him for a while. And I waited probably 45 minutes. And when he took off running, I thought I saw part of the arrow fly out. So I got down about 45 minutes later and walked 50 yards over to where the arrow is. And I'm probably at this point 10 yards from the end of the trees on my west side and my south side. And I know he didn't run north or east, so I figure all that's west is 200 yards of open trees, or open CRP before the trees. And then to the south is the creek, and I didn't hear him hit that. So I figured I'm already this close, I might as well follow the little bit of blood to the edge of the trees and see which way he went, and then back out and come look this afternoon. So I get out there, and I get to the edge of the trees, and I can't find any blood anywhere. And I'm standing 5 yards from the creek bank, and this is probably a 15, 20-foot drop. So I walk up there with my bow in one hand and my other hand in my pocket, no arrow nocked or anything. I step up there and look down in the willows, and this buck is standing up, and his body's facing away, but he's turned back looking at me. So I grab my bow with my other hand and try to knock an arrow, and he takes off running down the creek through the willows. So I got an arrow knocked, and tried to circle around and get above him because he stopped probably 75 yards away. So I was going to try to sneak up behind a tree and then get another shot on him. Well, I get over probably 3/4 of the way to where I'm trying to get, and I see the willows moving towards the creek. So at that moment, I basically just jumped off the creek bank, and I'm weaving through 12-foot tall willows on a deer trail, and I hear him hit the water, and I've got like 20 yards left to go before I get there. And I don't remember clearing those last 20 yards with all the adrenaline going, but basically I got up there, and Cody, that second part of the video where you see him standing there up to his chest in the water.
Yeah.
You can actually see it in the little better video I've got of it, where there's actually blood flowing out of his chest right there. So I arrange him at 30 yards, standing chest deep in the water, and I drop my rangefinder on the ground and look down, and I draw back, and then when I look up and focus on him, he's actually almost to the other side of the creek walking away, which I didn't notice. So I'm trying to stop him and basically guess the yardage, and he won't stop. You can tell he's hurting. So he's walking at what I guessed is 40. I led him a little bit, put my 40-yard pin on it, and pulled the trigger, and it went straight through him. He made 3 big leaps, and blood sprayed out both sides, and then he fell down on the creek bank, and he's sitting there with his head up for 5 seconds, and then he just tips over, and he's done. So had to walk all the way about a mile back to the truck, and then circle back around town like a 5-mile trip to get to the other side of the creek where he's at. And got over there, me and Andy's dad went and loaded him up, and then family came up and took pictures and everything. But pretty crazy story. Definitely, that's why I call him my miracle buck, is because you'd think there's no way that would happen. You're hanging off the side of a tree at 25 yards and the deer has no clue you're there. But
yeah,
pretty
for sure,
crazy,
man. Yeah, on the ground, get it done like that, it's pretty epic. And I would have botched that first shot too, being all adrenaline rushed up like that. It's hard, man. Like, I've never killed a deer on the ground, a buck on the ground without a blind. I've killed does raw dog, but never like a target buck on the ground. So I've never felt that rush of like this dude's 20 yards straight in front of me. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's pretty exciting. That was the first one. That second shot on him was the first time I've shot a buck from the ground with a bow. And then this past year I got my Colorado muley on the ground with a bow. But yeah, it's definitely, I would consider it a lot more exciting when you're on the ground at their level and not in a blind. It's pretty nerve-wracking, but the adrenaline really hits you after it's over with.
I think that's why I like turkey hunting so much. You're
right
just
there.
like, yeah, you're right there.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you get them at 5 yards in the decoys.
Well, we won't get carried away, but yeah, something like that.
We may have been there before.
Maybe. So you had mentioned you had a full moon coming in. Is that something that you key on, is, the moon phase?
I pay a little bit of attention to it. I'm not as big into it as a lot of guys are, but I've listened and read a lot about it. I think it does make a difference and can make a difference. I think the big thing with that time was that it was the exact same time as we had the first cold front of the year, and I think it was like 33 that morning when I got in the tree, and the past few weeks before that had been 80s and 90s and just unbearable hot. So that's the most deer movement that I've seen early season probably ever. A mix between the full moon and the first cold front.
I'm gonna say, yeah, like the time frame you're talking about is we can't even get a buck on cam, let alone see him hunting.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It can be pretty tough early.
But I definitely noticed like a lull in the movement when it's full moon, and there's no cloud cover at night. Like when I'm walking into the stand and it's those conditions, clear night, full moon, like I ain't gonna see shit.
Yeah,
I just know it.
I like morning hunts early, a lot more than a lot of people. Seems, especially around here, there's not that many people that bow hunt in the mornings on early season. But just the other day, I was listening. I don't know if you guys listened to Whitetail Habitat Solutions, Jeff Sturgis.
Yeah.
I was listening to one of his videos at work the other day, and basically he described it exactly how I thought it would work, but he says a lot of times on full moons, he didn't necessarily say early season, but on full moons, he said a lot of times you'll notice the activity the evening before a full moon or big moon. You won't see as much activity, but they'll hang out a lot longer in the morning in daylight than they do the night before. And I've kind of patterned that the way he said it. So I was going into that morning, I was pretty excited about it, and it turned out to be pretty good.
I would say, like, I've tried to dive into it because, you know, that's something you can look at a calendar and be like, all right, you know, tonight's going to be a full moon, and, you know, you can kind of bank on it. But, you know, a cold front hitting at 4 a.m. might not always pan out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, I've tried to look into it, and it's just something that, you know, it, just like you said, you know, it's kind of almost, you know, it worked for you at this time, but it didn't work out for this guy, and it just kind of, everybody has their own little, you know, nick and cranny on it, and I haven't quite figured out mine.
Yeah, I think especially with full moon stuff, and I'm a big bass fisherman too, so I kind of see it jump back and forth with fishing and deer hunting. But when there is moon phases or like new moon and full moon, stuff like that, I kind of notice that weather has a lot to do with that too. So you could have crap weather but a full moon and it still might not be good, but if you have a full moon and good weather, it can be insane.
Yeah, and especially with, you know, the juries putting out, you know, deer cast and launching that 2 years ago, and giving full access that first year, and basically, you know, running down through, you know, everything, how they go about their deer hunting down to the science that they do it at. And, you know, weather trumps moon, and just like you said there, and, you know, just trying to really pinpoint what is going to be the best case scenario for me. And I haven't been able to do it yet, you know, and
We've been
that's
saying we're gonna have a professional come on here and talk about the moon.
I would say, yeah, I just need
year.
a lunar,
you definitely should, because
lunar
I want to listen
expert.
to it.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of downloads,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't believe. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that'd
it's
be a good video to do.
There's definitely something to the moon, though. I believe, you know, I mean, it controls the oceans, and you know,
I fully believe in it.
and then I feel like, you know, just like the juries talk a lot about the barometric pressure, I feel like there's something about that. Clear, sunny day, you wake up out of bed, you see the sun shining, you feel good, you got a lot of energy. I feel like it does the same for deer, turkeys, everything of that sort, and you're just going to have the ability to see more action and more movement.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically how I describe it too.
So a lot of stuff went into the hunt of this buck, but you mentioned that there were some small details that you thought made you successful.
Yep. Yeah. So, basically, the actual hunt and killing of that buck was, like I told you the other day, Cody. I basically just consider it a miracle. But getting to that spot and hunting that area is kind of what we talked about with the small details. Just learning to be able to be flexible and change with last minute conditions, because especially like for us, that's all I've ever hunted is cattle pastures, and I grew up hunting with my dad and my uncle, which I would consider some of the best whitetail hunters, at least in the area for sure, that I know. They've been bow hunting since they were 15, so I basically can credit all my knowledge to them. But that's one thing they taught me, is don't get too fixated on what you've seen work before. You got to basically just put all the current information together and be able to make adjustments last minute if you have to. And that's basically how those first 3 weekends of early season went for me, because I mean, I would consider it entirely new property as far as hunting. I had spent all 2018 summer up there running mineral and cameras and stuff like that, so I got to pattern deer a little bit, but when you're actually hunting, you guys know, is a lot different. So yeah, just a lot of last minute adjustments, and observation sits are probably one of the most important things to me. And that's one thing that my dad and uncle taught me too. And I always hated doing it, because basically I just considered it, well, I've only got 2 days a weekend to hunt, so I'm just going to blow 1 or 2 sits sitting far away where I know I'm probably not going to kill a deer just to watch the deer. But in all reality, if you do take that time to sit back and watch the deer and where they're going, it can just jump you ahead that much farther for actually killing one.
Yeah, being flexible is huge. We've tried to do that every year a little better. We always kick ourselves in the ass by not being aggressive enough, and that's something that we're going to change this year. We said we were going to change it last year.
I would say, are you sure?
We did. I did. I was way more
Yeah.
aggressive, but I need to be a whole nother level.
I would say we both need to be.
Yeah. We hunted the edges a lot and did some observation sets. And we had public land where stuff wasn't pressured before and ended up being pressured.
It just sucks, like, kind of going there to waste a hunt to a point, but you have to, like, cross that off your list.
Yeah, like, I had really good success
early.
in there years past, but the pressure was different. The pressure was higher, so it was pushing the deer back earlier.
Right.
And all of our pictures were nocturnal on the edge, and even the other people that were hunting there, their pictures were all nocturnal.
Yeah.
So the deer were still using that area, but they just weren't there in daylight, you know what I mean? But they're still there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's, like you said, that's basically, it feels like you're wasting a hunt, but in reality, just if you can sit back and watch what they're actually doing and where they're really going and then dive in there and get aggressive in that area, you can learn a lot more. And like I listened to your guys' new video the other day about the hang and hunt stuff, and basically, like, I've tried to do a little bit of it, but especially after listening to that, I'm gonna have to do more this year, because like you said, you can find the right area, but finding the perfect tree is harder. And that's kind of what we learned in this spot that I killed that buck out of. Basically sat the same tree this year and had deer come by it, but the activity wasn't exactly the same because there wasn't an acorn crop like there was the year before. So the trails they were using were actually just out of range for the most part. So hanging hunts and bouncing around and being more flexible is definitely high on my list for new strategies and to do more.
Yeah, just buy you some good gear and go for it, man. But once you start doing it, you'll be like, you either know this is for me or this is not for me, but you'll probably be like, okay, this is what I need to do. And homie killed a buck on a hanging hunt. I killed a doe on a hanging hunt. We almost killed absolute giant buck on, had a lot of opportunities, just, stuff don't work out, shooting lanes, etc. But I feel like it ups your odds a lot. But one thing I will tell you is something that we struggle when we say not be aggressive enough is when you're in that hang and hunt mentality, what we catch ourselves doing a lot, and maybe you can touch on this too, homie, is when you're walking into an area and you have an area that you want to hunt, and then you're walking in and you're like, man, I still got to get set up. I got to get the tree arm up. I got to get the camera up. And then you find a spot that's, oh, man, this tree is good. This is a decent area. This isn't where I want to be, but this is sufficient. And you just go with that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we did that last year more than we should. Like, we were like, oh, we're going to go packing deep, and then we end up hunting the sunflower field. That's like a backup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's something I'll let you, just as a tip, just if you have a place in mind, go in there and hunt that area. Because if you burn a hunt, you're still going to not know what's in that area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just like we had talked about in that mobile hunting podcast or mobile packing podcast is that's why we try to scout them areas while we're shed hunting or, at least right now. I mean, now the timber's getting really full. You just got to get in there and know what trees you can get in and the areas that you like and want to be in. And because, we have a couple spots that are going to be new for us this year. We definitely have them marked down for October hunts. And we have some that are marked down for cold fronts and some that are marked down just to hunt because they look good while we're in there shed hunting. And
for sure.
It's just something that is... you just gotta cross it off your list, or be like, hey, yeah, this was decent. We can come back to this.
Yeah, I'm learning to do that a lot more. Was it that same video where you guys talked about getting low in that cedar tree when you killed Sunshine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was something I wanted to hit on too. I don't know if you guys watched our last deer hunting episode that I put out a couple months ago, where I hit that buck and lost him, and then he ended up coming back in October.
No, I haven't watched that one. No.
You'll have to check that one out and let me
Yeah.
know what you think. But basically, that was kind of the same situation where we've got a little half-acre food plot up on top of this hill, and it's like we've got big rolling hills up there, and this is right above the Niobrara before I wouldn't call it bluffs, but like buttes, kind of just really high up hills off the river, but it's open. And this plot we have is just right up on top of the flat spot, and then down in the valley is buckbrush and then some hardwoods for bedding. And we've got a lot of good deer out there, especially in October, November. The does kind of go out there to get away from the bucks, and then the bucks just pile in there in November. But we had the food plot in 2018 too with turnips, and it did okay. And then last year I decided to plant basically it's kind of the shape of a baseball field. This plot is the best way I could describe it. But we planted the border of half of it with corn, basically just as a plot screen, which didn't do as well as I hoped it to. So we're doing it in Egyptian wheat this year. But I had a lot of bucks come into that, and I actually had two 6-year-old 8-points come into that plot this year, like regularly. And the main one that I was after was there. I think I'd have to watch the video again, but I'm pretty sure he was there like 13 out of the 15 days before season, and sometimes in daylight, sometimes right after. And it was like the week before season started that I was trying to figure out how to get on these deer, because they funnel in from little pockets all around this spot. So I didn't know where my best bet would be or exactly where these bucks were bedding. And there's just this tiny little, probably 20-foot tall tree, but it's got branches everywhere. It's just thick as could be. So I'm looking at that thing. I'm like, well, I've heard of people hanging stands in really low trees before if you got enough back cover. So, and it's a little hardwood. I don't know what kind of tree it is, but it's brushy as could be. And I got up in there the week before season and hung a stand that's probably maybe 10 foot off the ground, but it's so thick. I just cut a little window through the tree. And opening night, I had the number 2 buck, 6.5-year-old 8-point, jump the fence probably an hour before sunset, fed his way all the way into 30 yards before I decided that I was actually going to shoot him. And then he made it into 25, and I buried the pin down in the beans right where I needed to. And it was dead calm that night, so I didn't really think about aiming low for him jumping the string, but especially at that distance. But he ducked like 8 inches right before the arrow hit him, and I hit him really high shoulder, and he ended up coming back in October and was completely fine. But basically, just like that stand where you guys killed Sunshine at, I would just look at the trees, and even if it doesn't look like it's big enough or thick enough to get into, it might just work. And that ended up being one of my best sets.
I'll say, well, we hit Sunshine.
You can make a lot of trees work. It might not be a spot that you can set all day, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can get in there
exactly.
and make it happen. And that's what we did that night. We knew 2 guys in a tree filming. I had to freehand all that film because the tree was so small that the camera arm wouldn't ratchet strap. If the base wouldn't ratchet strap, but that gives you an idea how small the tree was. And if we moved, the tree moved, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's exactly how this tree was. I barely got my camera arm on there, and I had to cut a branch off a smaller tree to basically shim the tree stand in there to even get that to ratchet strap on. So
yeah,
tiny tree and super low to the ground, but it was so thick and just in the perfect spot that it worked out.
you know, sometimes you just gotta all right, 5 years, I'm gonna be back in this tree. It's bigger, you know what I mean? But it's just the right spot, so you gotta be there.
I would say that ambush and that element of surprise is sometimes that just gets you over the edge and gets you right where you need to be to get it done.
exactly. I'm learning that more and more every year.
That's good to hear, because that's what we're doing. And, a lot of guys we talk to is, just, oh, I'm doing this and this and this. But, for you to say that you're still learning and, you're out there and you're absorbing everything you can and trying to be a better hunter. And, at the end of the day, that's all that we all can do is just try to get better.
Yeah, exactly. If anybody tells you they know it all, they're definitely wrong. There's always something to learn.
I feel like there's a lot of guys that know how to do it, know what they're doing, but just like me, man, I had a good run and then shit changes. And if I would have still been hunting the same way, like the corner stand on the lease, if I'd have just been like, I'm just going to stay here. It's been good the last 3 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not switch it up, I'd still be sitting there, you know what I mean? Like no kills. So
yeah,
it's easy to get in a rut, but
I got hit with that pretty bad. Basically, when I started bow hunting pretty heavy, like mostly by myself, because when I started hunting legally, you can hunt here or could at age 12, and I killed my first buck with my dad. It was a 130-inch 8-point, and then the next year I killed 141-inch 9. Year after that, I killed 156-inch 9, and then 2 years after that, I killed 136-inch 8. And 2 weeks later, I killed a 146-inch 15-pointer. And then I had like a 4 or 5 year stretch where I didn't kill anything of size. Basically, when I was just trying to do it all on my own and thinking I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't.
Yeah, it'll humble you quick, man, and sometimes the deer just change, man. It's either pressure or that's what happened to me. I had hunters moving in and hunting properties that weren't hunted before, and me thinking, they won't make that big of an impact, and it completely changes everything that they do and how they use the ground. And I'm telling homie about how good this spot is, and it's nuts. And then we go in there, and he's like, "Man, this is kind of shit."
Yeah,
but,
it can be frustrating for sure, especially. Like I know exactly how that goes when hunting pressure happens, because I mean we got a ton of family ground and private access ground that my dad and uncle have had forever, about an hour north of where I live. And we've basically every year we go through that where there'll be a bunch of people hunting one property and completely changes the deer. But that always frustrated me quite a bit. But like my dad basically just said, yeah, it sucks that there's other people hunting there and it changes the patterns of the deer, but you can use those other people hunting to your advantage if you figure out where the deer are basically trying to escape these people from and coming back to the property from. You can get on a new pattern and basically just, like we talked about earlier, be flexible and open to change and always try to learn.
Yeah, and when I started bow hunting, nobody really bow hunted that I was close to. So I always felt like I was about, 2 years behind what the deer were actually doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then, started doing this podcast, started talking to some guys, and then I closed the gap. And, I felt like I was just, 1 year behind. I just needed to be where I thought I was when I was scouting that following year after the deer season. And then, I finally make that jump, and then they bulldozed all kinds of timber in the property, and the deer are doing nothing remotely close to what they were doing. So now I'm just like, okay, clean slate here. But, it's always fun to try to learn what they're doing again and, get the cameras out and, just start from blank zero pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you first see the change, it's always frustrating and kind of upsetting.
Because you're like, I should have known that.
Yeah, like some things like that where they bulldoze it, it's never going to be the same again. That can be pretty heartbreaking. We've gone through that up on family ground and stuff when they're trying to clear more area for grazing, which is understandable when you're the landowner and that's what you're using the property for. But like for us, just having to start from scratch can be frustrating, but it's also kind of fun.
Yeah, most definitely. If it was the same every year, it'd be boring. So
yeah,
I like a little struggle.
Yeah. And I mean, just with, hunting public this past year, couple new properties of private, I've definitely enjoyed, getting to that blank slate and not having, just like you were talking about earlier there, Garrett, falling in love with a stand or an area and just going back to the old well, and expecting different results or, the same results that you've had, and getting to a new piece and trying to really apply the skills and the history that you've learned for hunting deer, definitely brings back a different passion.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the guy with I forgot his name already, but the Megalodon podcast.
Yeah,
super sad.
How what you guys said about all those like low after low after low, and then you finally find it. The excitement is way more than it would have been if you would have found them right away. I kind of consider that the same thing. If when you're actually hunting, you get kicked in the ass one time after another, but when it does finally pay off, your excitement and how happy you are is just way higher than it would have been if it just worked out right away.
Yeah, it's always better. Me and homie take a lot of ass kickings.
Yeah,
it is
I do
super
too.
solid when we get it done. Man, it feels so good.
I would say,
it does.
If chaos shows up again in July on a food plot, we're just like, okay, it's same as last year. We're all good. But if he don't show up till, September 20th, and it's right before season, like when we pull that the weekend before season starts, and then we finally get him on camera, we're like, holy shit, like, they were gonna be jacked.
Yeah.
But if you just have them all year like you did the year before, you're just like, all right, it's same shit, just keep going.
Yeah. When you build those relationships with a deer and the history, and they keep kicking your ass year after year, that's when it's like you're like, all right, this is my year. I'm coming at you. So.
Yeah, I've been there with a couple different deer that I was absolutely obsessed about. Neither one of them ended good for me.
Yeah,
but it's a lot of fun when
they're not
going to
end good for us.
One.
We just have high hopes.
I was saying there's only one we're obsessed with. The other one's just kicking our ass.
The other one's like, I just want to shoot him just because he's just like ruining my life.
Yeah, he's just there.
I thought I killed him last year, but it was a different deer.
It's always those ones that kick your ass that you want to kill the most.
Oh yeah.
One of them hunts, played it on the edge.
Yeah.
Dumb.
But...
Now, I mean, I can't say that I did anything different, but you just one of them hunts. You look back at it, you're like, well, that was dumb.
Yeah, I went in one night and got off work late, and I was gonna, I was just like, I'll just go to the closed stand. I don't even know why we got to stand there. It's like pretty much that reason because we have endless amounts of stands in our garage because we lost our lease. You know what I mean? There's like 10 sets out in my fucking garage right now.
Right.
But I'm like, I'll just sit here, and I'm like, man, a buck's gonna get bumped off this cornfield.
In the interview, you're like, oh, it's right by the road. It's nice.
Yeah.
Farmer's up there picking the corn. Hopefully bump a deer to me. Well, yeah, he bumped a deer.
30 minutes later on my mobile cam, 5 yards from the other tree stand that I was going to go to, but then I pussed out. There's Chaos, our target buck for the property, just cruising through there an hour and a half before dark. I'm like, oh my God.
Only daylight picture of that
Only
deer.
daylight we've ever got of him.
That gives you such a sick feeling when
you're just like,
especially,
I am so dumb right now.
Especially when you got the decision between like only 2 stands that this deer's coming by and you pick the wrong one, like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what it was.
That's exactly the story. The last 3 deers or 3 bucks that I was obsessed with. That's basically how it went for me. If I sat in one stand, they'd walk by the other.
They know. They're just toying with us. But I'll catch up eventually. I got time on my side.
You do,
still alive.
That's always good.
Yeah. So he's just got to mess up one time. Well, I'm there.
That's all you can ask for. But even then, they usually got the upper hand.
Oh yeah, he messed up that day, but wasn't there. 150 yards away. It's crazy how 150 yards makes.
I know, because you got that hillside right in front of you, and I mean, you can't.
No, nothing.
I wonder if. I don't even think if I was in Blaze Orange in that stand, you could see each other from.
No.
Just that thick.
It's like it's
land. CRP, but there's just a little hillside. Yeah.
Like
gotcha.
Slide down to a creek bottom.
A tiny hillside. You think a buck could just run a doe up in that grass, bed up, and
no.
No deer's bedding in that anywhere close.
No.
Doesn't work out like you think it would on paper.
No, oh yeah, this property's fire on
No,
paper.
yeah. I would say you go out there right now, you're like, holy shit, boys, we're gonna be in them right now.
You be in them for about 12 minutes while they're running across the property.
I would say November 18th, you'd be like, where are these deer at? Before November 18th, it's fine,
Yeah.
but we just ain't there.
Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah, I've been there.
We appreciate you coming on. Let the people know where they can find you and follow your content.
All right. Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at Chasing the Dream TV. There's CHASIN with Dream TV. Find us on Facebook the same way, as well as YouTube. If I can get these guys a couple links to link in the video, I'll do that. And
We
then
can do that for sure.
our Twitter page whenever we get that started.
I was say, you got some time, but the
Yeah.
clock is ticking.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing the story of the hunt and talking about how small details and making moves can make you capitalize on these bucks.
Yep. Always learning.
All right, guys. I hope you learned maybe a little something from that. Just a couple tips from this episode. Don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to go to that spot that you keep thinking about. Don't get accustomed to the same stand and get set in that trap and just keep going because it was good in the past. Change it up, see if it works. If it don't work, you know that you have your old stand in the back burner. Go ahead and check out Chasing the Dream and Garrett Heikes. They're putting out awesome content, and we're enjoying it a lot. We appreciate you guys listening. Always try to do the right thing, leave a legacy, and Whitetail Legacy's out.